Good evening, everyone. Thanks, or actually, if you're watching later down the line, catching up, then good morning or good afternoon. But thanks for joining us this evening. We're here for one of our men's panels, which we really enjoyed doing because it brings real life stories to the fore. It's often from people who haven't always had that voice in when it comes to fertility treatment, the men. But what we're really pleased of with our community at Nexus is that conversation is coming to the fore now. It is guys are coming and sharing their stories and their experiences, which is what it's all about. It's not about one person knowing the answers or like having some gold standard experience because everyone's different, and that's the beauty of life, is that we all experience things differently. So we're here tonight to talk about how to live whilst in the wait, how to continue living rather than just waiting to live, which fertility treatment can feel like. It's one of the hardest parts of fertility treatment. When, what we all know so well, the waiting for appointments, for the results from those appointments, for further referrals, for operations, for cycles, and life can really feel on hold, and you can feel completely consumed by uncertainty, and it's really hard. And I think eventually you kind of find your own way and you find what works for you. Doesn't make it always really easy, but it's about finding what nuggets work for some people and then putting it out there so that others might go, yeah, do you know what? I'm going to try that, or actually that might not work for me. And that's the beauty of a discussion, is that there'll be things that work for some and not for others. So we'll explore how men and couples can live through that time of the uncertainty, and how you keep moving and stay connected and to continue to build a life even when everything else feels on hold. So, what I'll do, I'll just introduce myself quickly. I'm Sean Greenaway. I'm a co-founder of Nexus Fertility, which is what we like to think the leading male fertility support platform. And I'm absolutely delighted tonight to be joined by two epic members of our community, Anish and Sean. So I'll get them to introduce themselves because they know themselves the best. And yeah, so firstly, all the way from Spain tonight, welcome, Anish.
Hi everyone. Yeah, my name's Anish. Me and my wife have been uh, trying to conceive for just over 2 years now. Um, it's been a long journey. It's obviously it started naturally, trying and then that wasn't working. We ended up sort of exploring the option of trying to go down the assisted route. Um, we're at the point now where I don't live in Spain. I wish I did, but I don't. Live in the UK, but we're in Spain currently having our second round of IVF at the moment. So that's where I'm at the moment.
Thank you. And honestly, we're so grateful that you're joining us, particularly for what you're in Spain for. So it's an honor and a pleasure to have you with us. So thank you. And Sean, if you could introduce yourself, please, mate.
Good evening. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone that's watching, whether it's tonight or whether it's the recording. Thank you very much for your time. And we hope that this really helps. So my name's Sean Farrell. I've been trying to conceive with my fiance Bronte for a little over 3 years now. We're just going into our third year of trying to conceive through IVF with donor sperm. So in April 2024, I was diagnosed with Sertoli cell only syndrome. So I have non-obstructive azoospermia. I also have grade 3 varicocele, but it's important to note that the varicocele isn't the cause of my infertility. Maybe a subject that we get onto in terms of how I discovered that, and what I'm actually currently doing at the moment is exploring to get that varicocele embolization done for my own general health and not just my fertility health. And we can probably touch on that as well and the importance of that. But yeah, so me and Bronte are trying to conceive with donor conception. We're currently in between clinics. We started receiving treatment at a clinic that was closer to home, but their ethos doesn't quite fit our needs. So we're actually exploring a different clinic at the moment, a little bit further away, and we're going to our first consultation with them tomorrow morning. So very much in the thick of it at the moment.
Yeah, and again, like that's why I'm so appreciative and honoured that you're here to share in the circumstance and situation and time frame that you're in. So, yeah, both of you guys, thank you so much. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. And I think let's start off with the weight of the waiting, it's really hard, and it does feel like a real weight on the shoulders and on life in general, as both as an individual and as a couple. So, Anish, over to you first, matey. So in your own experience, what is it that makes that weight feel so heavy? The weight of the waiting.
Yeah, I would say it's I guess everyone's going to be different. It's down to your personal story, but for me personally, it's been that we've had those multiple sort of rounds of unexpected delays. We started off thinking initially, I always thought it could have been an issue with myself. So, you go through that first sperm analysis, things didn't look great, figured out what I needed to do to improve, but then next thing I know, I've got a varicocele. Have that first varicocele treated, 3 months later, find out I've got a varicocele on the other side. So every time you feel like you're sort of taking a step forward, 2 steps back. So in fact, it's taken us probably 18 months of prep work to get to the point of actually going and actually having a cycle of IVF, just because of so many delays. So yeah, it's the time in between, the time for things to heal, time for the male side sperm to regenerate. So all of those things just take so long. So it's and you're constantly thinking of it. It's not something that just switches off and go, oh, think about that later. It's always on your mind, because I guess everyone here and everyone watching, it's something we all truly want. We all want to be parents. So yeah, it's just always that it's on your mind all the time, and delay after delay, it doesn't help. So.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And you're so right. It's no matter what you're doing, no matter where you are in the world, even if you like think, right, let's get off and go on holiday somewhere. It's like I've described it before as like a spectre that's just there looming, and it just takes that little shine off no matter what you're doing. And yeah, it's that's I think when I mentioned like the weight of the weight, that's for me what it was is that like, exactly what you said, the fact that it's always there in some respect. And how about you, Sean? How does that compare to what you're feeling?
I think it's so funny how we all relate to each other. We didn't know each other before this community existed. We were all living our individual lives, and then when we get the privilege of meeting one another, we see how many similarities we all have on our journeys. And everything Anisha's said there is something that I can resonate with. And I'm sure everything I say he'll resonate with likewise. For me, it's the isolation, and I think for our partners, it's the isolation. That's the real weight of the waiting, because yes, there are real challenges when it comes to the wait in between appointments and the wait for your body to heal and get up to an optimized level of whether that's sperm production or whether it's your female partner trying to get to the best point in her health. So the isolation of no one else around you seemingly understanding just what you're going through mentally and physically is definitely the hardest part of the wait, because without speaking to like-minded people who are going through similar journeys, you can be on your own as a couple or as an individual. So that's the hardest part for me, for sure, is the isolation.
Oh yeah, and when you're seeing, as we all know, like the kind of cliches, but they are true because they happen and they're so jarring. But when like your friends are just kind of having babies or having pregnancy announcements, it compounds that isolation, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Before I started talking to couples that are also experiencing infertility, you truly feel alone, and you can describe what you're going through to your family and friends, and that takes a lot of effort. And some people, it might not be the road they want to go down. But for those of us that do share our stories with our closest friends and family, or even strangers on a community like this, it can really lift that weight of isolation off.
Yeah, yeah. I think with isolation often comes like forms of shame, and heard a quote or read a quote that said shame dies in where experiences are shared or something. I've just completely butchered that probably, but I think when you do have that community to know that other people are going through that exact same thing, it can be invaluable because when you're not feeling represented by people around you, and you talk about kind of that waiting, like Anish said, like it even to get to a point where you're ready to move forward, it takes sometimes almost like a year, 2 years, even more, and that's so frustrating. And I remember one of my friends reflecting about a year ago, saying he remembers me and us in that period of when we were trying, but unbeknownst to them, he was like, he said, "Oh, I just wondered why you kept going off on holidays and like why you weren't settling down and stuff." And it's because we couldn't be around those people, and that was too heavy for us. So, like Anish, I wonder how that weight has shown up for you in your day-to-day life. You mentioned that kind of 18 months, so even feel like you're getting started and making some progression. So how has that showed up for you over the last year and a half?
I guess you can take it as a positive and a negative. A positive being, oh, there's another step forward, like the sperm analysis is improved, for example, or the DNA fragmentation's come down. And so you have to sort of take it as a little win at the same time, because albeit we haven't, ourselves, we haven't reached the ultimate goal of being parents yet. You've got to say to yourself, well, this is all sort of along the journey of trying to get to that point. So I take it in both ways. I take it that, yeah, it's a positive, I've had the embolizations done, so that's going to help things, all of that's improved. So now we're at the point where hopefully things should start to make a difference. But at the same time, it's you sort of look at it every month, we reorder supplements and stuff. You're like, oh, it's another month or of things not working out. It kind of feels, you don't feel like you're losing time, but it has that effect because fortunately we're still quite young, but every month that goes by, you're just like, oh, it's another month that's gone and won't get that back. So and I know you can think of that in life, but I guess when you're so focused on fertility and trying to have a baby, it's that ultimately comes up every time. You just think, oh, ordering another month or another 2 months worth of supplements, and then you're just thinking a bit like that.
And also the monetary cost to that as well, which stings. Yeah. You both mentioned varicocele. I think before kind of we go anywhere else, it'd be good to touch upon your experiences with that, and staying with you, Anish, because you mentioned that you had one dealt with, and then unfortunately another was identified. Like, to take me through that.
Yeah, so I think the first one I noticed, I didn't self-diagnose, but I realized something wasn't quite right. So I didn't even tell anyone. I went off and had an ultrasound. I just booked one privately and just went to have it done, and they confirmed it. So initially I saw a consultant and he said, no, leave it, it'll be fine, don't need to worry about it. And then I could just feel things weren't improving. Things, I guess I started listening to podcasts, and your podcast, for example, where you mentioned about DNA fragmentation. So I started looking into it, and I thought, well, what if this is one of the reasons that it's not happening for us? So eventually one thing led to another, led me to Stephen Moser, and couldn't recommend him highly enough because he sorted the first one out. But 3 months later, I think the worst thing was that went for an ultrasound when I got diagnosed on the other side, and up to that point, my wife was fine. She was completely fine with all of the stuff that was going on. She was like, look, it's going to happen in time. And I think that's the first point where, when he said, you've got another one on the other side, she sort of, could tell that really sort of hurt her, because it not hurt her and I'd done something wrong. It was just a massive setback for us. But eventually we, got that second one treated, and we're on our way to this round of IVF. But yeah, it's that crushing blow of, you've done the hard work, you've waited the sort of 3 to 6 months, and then and then they go, no, you've got another one on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely, because you look for these almost milestones and those milestones are like they're the next finger hold of hope that you're clinging on to, and then suddenly when they are extended, I remember that feeling so well. So how did it come about that the first one wasn't identified the first time around, or did something else happen to make it deteriorate?
So from what I know, the right hand side hadn't. it wasn't large enough to treat. So there was something there, but it wasn't large enough to treat. That within that 3 months or 3 to 6 months following the first embolization, it grew to a point where it ended up being sort of a grade 3. There's symptoms of pain, and we sort of decided upon ourselves that, look, if my DNA fragmentation was high at the time, that if that side is there on the right hand side, that's not going to get any better with it being there. So took the decision to get it treated.
Wow, yeah, fair play, and more waiting.
Yeah, more waiting. Yeah, because you speak to the consultants, top consultants, and they say, yeah, minimum 3 months, but if you want to make sure everything's done properly, you've got to wait 6 months, and you're thinking that's half a year. That's yeah. Then you've got to time it. We it was our choice to come abroad to have treatment, but you've got to then time it with work and everything. So you're looking at 8-9 months before you can even get started again.
Wow, yeah, it's a tough one to swallow. It certainly is. And how about you, Sean? What's your experience with the varicocele side of things? Where are you at now?
So it's weird listening to that and thinking about the time frames and how quickly time passes, because it will be coming up to almost 2 years now since we got the results of my FNA mapping, which is similar to a microtesia. And at the time I knew I had a varicocele, so it was one of those things that I haven't just found out about, but when I had an ultrasound just before my operation, I was told that I had a grade 3 varicocele on the left side. And we knew, because it wasn't the cause of my infertility, that it had to go on the back burner, basically. So for the last couple of years, we've been concentrating on choosing a donor and getting to the point where we're ready to start treatment. And so in my personal experience with varicoceles, I'm back in the NHS's world. And I think it's important to note, because I'm sure it will be something that people on this call or that are going to watch the recording of experienced themselves, is I asked for a referral. So I phoned my GP practice. I asked the receptionist to book me an appointment with a doctor so that I could have a referral for an embolization, because obviously at this point, all the time that's gone on, we're more in the know than a standard patient would have been who didn't know what a varicocele was initially. And so you start to dictate what you want out of the healthcare services that you're trying to seek, don't you? Because it will help get you further along the line. And so I explained as much as I thought would be necessary on the phone, and then had an appointment. So when I went to that appointment, I was told that it would have to be a doctor that put the referral through, because it was a nurse practitioner that I'd been given an appointment with. And so, straight away I just said, well, I told the receptionist that I'd need to speak to a doctor to get a referral, and they booked me in with a nurse practitioner, which is fine for general health, but for this particular issue, I needed to speak to a doctor. So I still haven't actually got that doctor's appointment. So it's just another example of those general practices, that primary care setting, not having the terminology, the knowledge of male fertility to escalate things like this of such importance. Because whether it's a week or whether it's 2 weeks, from a patient's point of view, that's frustration. So I'm back in that cycle of frustration with the NHS now, where even though I've been explicit and I've said exactly what I think needs to happen especially within the framework of the NHS, they didn't understand my initial request. It either got misinterpreted or misunderstood. So then they booked me an appointment with a nurse practitioner, which isn't helpful, because I needed to speak to a doctor for a referral. So now I've got to go back to the surgery in a couple of days' time to then go through the whole situation again. And you just know from experience that you're going to have to repeat yourself. So the whole point is I'm trying to get an NHS-funded varicocele embolisation, because we've spent so much money on previous surgery and IVF treatment so far that it's just one thing that we simply can't afford. So if I can get that funded and hopefully push for an embolisation at Stephen Moser's clinic, then that's what I will do. But I just have this awful feeling, which I'm sure we can all relate to, that it's going to get so frustrating that I'll probably just end up trying to save for it and pay for it privately, because they'll more than likely tell me it's going to be an 11 to 12-month wait to speak to a urologist on the NHS now. But I just want to highlight, before we move on to a different subject, that varicocele, that's for my general health. That's for my testosterone levels. That's for my long-term future medical health. It's not necessarily for my fertility health. So it still should be treated just as important as someone who's trying to optimize their sperm health, in my opinion. But it just doesn't seem to be a topic that the surgeries are familiar with, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, you're right. And yeah, not to mention that there have been studies, I think there's Denmark published one last year which ran over about 50 years, which showed clear links between men's sperm health and their overall general health and longevity.
Yeah.
And you are, yeah, quite rightfully advocating for yourself in this circumstance, and very frustrating, which is a huge part of the stress of the waiting and how long it takes to get these referrals. And I mean, and you said about you're so right about the kind of lack of general awareness of these issues. I found my own varicocele in 2011 and went and got a scan, and it was dismissed as, oh, don't worry, it's just a cluster of tubes, because I was worried about a tumor. That's what they were obviously looking for. We didn't start trying for another 6 years after that. So yeah, it's there needs to be definitely a bit more education around health issues for men and what can affect our longevity. So yeah, fair play, mate. And I think that does lead on to something a good segue into the next topic, really, about managing the mental loads around the waiting. Like, what has helped you, Sean? I'll stay with you in these situations where, for example, it feels like you maybe bashing your head against the wall sometimes. But so how do you manage that without kind of exploding?
I'm sure you'll all have felt that urge, and Sean, you're an advocate for this because you've decided to make it your life's work and your career. Because I came out of that appointment and I just thought, that's it. I'm gonna make a journal about this, and I'm gonna start a journal on how long it's going to take me to get to the point where I actually have the repair, and just so I can document it and then feed it back and talk about it and actually publicize it and bring it up in forums like this, because it is so frustrating. And you just think, if I don't write every single detail down as it happens now, this story will become unbelievable when I repeat it to others in the future, because of the steps that you have to follow just to get to the end goal. That's not necessarily something I've used as a coping mechanism, but I think going forwards, it might be something that I try, writing things down and getting your head around it and processing that information every time you have a setback. One of the biggest things I'm sure that a lot of people relate to is I try to talk to Bronte about it in as much detail as possible whenever any of these things happen or happened in our journey so far to trying to become parents. One of the things that I do to not go crazy is not feel the guilt of having my own personal hobbies and habits. So I've kept my gym membership, for example, even though that's another direct debit that you think, because we're paying for IVF, it's one thing I could do without. And then had a conversation with Bronte and we said, actually, that's really important that I still go to the gym and still pay for that monthly direct debit, because we've spent enough on IVF, we can justify another 30 quid a month. And for the mental health impact and the physical impact that it gives you to actually still go to the gym and have that headspace on your own, that's really important for me. Another thing we do is we try to go out and be as active as possible and go on walks. And that's where we get a lot of our harder, more serious conversations out of the way. When we were choosing a donor, for example, we did a lot of car journeys together and a lot of walks in the park to try and get those conversations out, because it was easier than just sitting down and trying to find time in the house to do that. And last year we played badminton together just to do some couples exercise. I helped get Bronte back riding because Bronte's very lucky. She owns 2 horses, and as you can all imagine, her confidence and her time with those animals had reduced significantly to the point where it was affecting her physical and mental health. So last year I helped get her back into riding, and she's got her own time away then. And so we've really focused on doing things that we enjoy ourselves away from the whole fertility world, just so that we can try and hold on to our own personalities.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with every strategy you said there. And how about you, Anish? What do you use to navigate the day to day sometimes?
Yeah, I'd echo the same as what Sean said. Me and my wife used to go to the gym separately, but now we go together. It sort of allows us to spend more time together, because we both obviously work different places. So even that 45 minutes in the morning, it just gives you that time to spend together. Try and go, like Sean said, we try and go on walks in the evening, just to get some fresh air, get some exercise, because albeit we're trying to take ourselves away from the IVF process, any little bits we can do to try and optimize a potential success, you can try and combine it with sort of that thing that you do every day. I've taken on new projects at work, nothing too serious, but it just allows me to sort of not completely forget about the fertility journey, but just put that to the back of your mind and focus on something new, but knowing that this is always going to be at the forefront. And then sitting and watching the football. Not that I'm enjoying it this season, but just things to just keep your mind off this. So it's
Well, I think well, firstly, I should ask who do you support?
I don't really want to say. I think we're Tottenham.
We can all laugh at that. But yeah, I think you've said something there which I know Sean will agree with as well. As a season ticket holder at Villa, it's probably a very appropriate escape for you both at times, to, for better for worse, for that 90 minutes just to be completely engrossed in something else.
Yeah,
Not just that, but
yeah,
then you can listen to the podcast after. If you enjoy the football podcast, then that gives you that little bit of time away from thinking about everything. Put something on in the car and sort of gives you that 45 minutes of release.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, but my wife actually moans. So I'll watch a football match live, then I'll watch the highlights, then I'll read the report of it, then I'll listen to a podcast or maybe Match of the Day or something of other people talking about it. It's just like I just don't understand. Like, why is the actual match not enough? But that's like, it's about perspectives. But that's what we're here for today. We all find different perspectives and meanings on things. And perhaps no meaning behind being a Tottenham fan, but that's another subject for another webinar. But
We won the trophy last year, so it's all right.
European champions, apparently. So, you touched upon something there, Anish, which I'll stay with you on. You mentioned that you started going to the gym with your other half, for example. What else have you done to maintain your communication and as a couple, and managing this and finding joy in life as a couple, as well as an individual yourself?
I would say it's if we go talk about it from the fertility point of view, it's we've just tried to be really open and honest with each other about it. So if I'm having a bad day about it, or for example, if I go back to my birthday last year, it just felt, oh, that's another birthday gone where I'm not a dad. So that was a tough day, but it was being honest with her and sort of explaining exactly how I was feeling, and just talking through those things. It's my good timing, bad timing. My wife started a new business within this sort of fertility journey of ours, so that's given us a little bit of sort of freedom of having to set up a new clinic and sort of do advertising, do marketing. That's given us sort of a different perspective on, look, yes, this is really important, trying to have a baby, but also we also have to live our own lives and fulfill our own dreams and aspirations in another sense. So that's another thing we've been spending a lot of time together, sort of working on and building on. So yeah, those kind of things.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point there, and it has it's something that's come up throughout. Actually, it's not never being all in on one thing or all out on it. It's not completely avoiding the difficult conversations around fertility and the next steps. but also just not living in it constantly. Because when you are at the kind of the behest and the mercy of medical processes and the waiting, like new protocols of medication, for example, supplements, yeah, a lot of it is out of your control, but it's about having one eye on where you next need to be, but then remaining present with your partner and of course with yourself as well, and like exercise being a vital thing that's come up here. I think not just for the kind of downstream benefits of just general health, but also mentally, that having that release of getting endorphins flowing and the other positive chemicals that come from exercise. So yeah, really important points there about kind of having something as an escape as well, because it's not and there's having something as an escape and burying your head in the sand, two very different things, and it hasn't been something that has come up at all, and it's important to know the difference there actually. And how about yourself, Sean? You and Bronte, what have you done together? You talked about like those conversations in with walks and in the car. Is there anything else that you've done that has really helped to maintain that communication, that bond?
The openness that Anish has mentioned is so important, and we've done that as well. And do you know what? It really, it almost makes me emotional when I hear Anish saying that last year he's had a birthday and he's verbalized that he's spending another birthday and he's not becoming a dad. It's not something that you hear on a day-to-day basis. You hear a lot about women not becoming moms or mothers, and it's quite common conversation, at the hairdressers or wherever they go and pamper themselves, or if they're speaking to family members, people talk about becoming a mom and being in my mom era and all that kind of stuff, whether you like that term for better or for worse. And just the terminology that we see now when we spend so much time on our phones, seeing people become parents that are younger than you, it really makes me emotional, and I felt that same thing, Anish. I said to myself, even if we had a successful embryo transfer now, that potential future person wouldn't come into the world until after my 37th birthday. And you have to start getting used to the fact that you're going to be an older parent than you wanted to be. You wanted to be a parent as young as possible so that you could have as much life with that potential person or persons. You wanted your mum or dad or whoever your person is in your life to become a grandparent, and that seems to be slipping away the longer it goes on, and their own general health. So there's a lot of emotion involved in it, and we have to talk about it as a couple, and that's one way we've coped, is by just being really open with each other about all of those really emotive parts of this journey, because they're real and we all feel them and we all have those individual personal experiences of them. And we've had to have those horrible conversations about how, whoever your potential future grandparent going to be, whether that's your mum or your dad or whatever your situation is, that they're getting older in front of your eyes, and you can see the physical changes in them. Then, and you wanted that for them, and they wanted that for you. And so the longer it goes on, it's just heartbreaking. And so, although you have to hold on to the hope that it's going to happen one day, you have to sit with the reality that it's there, and these are things that you do think about. So me and Bronte have really tried to address them and hit them, um, front facing, and we've had those conversations, and it helps you process those emotions that you feel. So getting them out and having those conversations really helps, and I would recommend it to anyone. Everyone's going to have their own way of processing their emotions and their feelings, but one thing is talking about it. It's for you more than anything. Of course, we all want to educate everyone around us that's not necessarily au fait with fertility terminology or what we might be experiencing as people that go through infertility. But one of the main things is speaking about it for your own mental health, and it can be your own therapy. So I would try and speak it out loud as much as possible. And that's one thing that me and Bronte do together, is just try and get it out of our systems, really.
Yeah, that's Yeah, really powerful stuff, Sean. Thank you. And yeah, really important point about it's often not just us that are going through it. It's our parents, or like you said, caregivers in any respect, who are also grieving what you're going through and what they thought the path that their life would take as well. And yeah, really, really difficult. And that shows how complex this is, this experience. Like it's so multi-level, multifaceted. And yeah, thank you. So I think this is quite a difficult question, so I won't direct it to either of you. I'll allow if one of you has something that comes up, please do jump in. But we've talked about the kind of the more like zoomed out objective ways in which we cope with the weight through fertility treatment and trying to conceive. What about in those really acute moments where you perhaps had a setback or some bad news in the moment? How do you boys, how have you managed to get back to some kind of mental peace? And I'm not saying that happens immediately. It might be a day or two or something. But what have you found to be your strategies in dealing with those setbacks?
Yeah, I can go. Mine's it's a bit of an odd one in the sense that, you know, people say, oh, don't Google too much and don't research too much. But I guess for me, like when I found out that I had the varicocele, first thing I did was like look up a lot about it. It just helped me sort of stay grounded. It allowed me to sort of process it a little bit better instead of trying to sort of talk to other people about it. It just allowed me to, you know, find out exactly what it was, what the treatment was, and yes, there's a solution. And then that helped me. As soon as I figured out, yep, there's a solution to this. This is the treatment that you need to have done. You know, it's not going to be that invasive. It sort of helped to, you know, provide that little bit of sense of relief that, okay, I've got this, but these are the steps that can be done to sort of try and alleviate it and treat it. So yeah, I mean, wouldn't recommend going to start Googling everything, but for me, it's like a little bit of time. If you need to know something about something quite specific, I don't see the harm in it, as long as you don't go and ask ChatGPT endless questions. It just gives you that sense of sort of groundedness, and it sort of gives you that sense of relief that something can be done.
Yeah.
That, again, my own personal experience might not apply to everyone, but yeah, that's the way I've looked at things.
Oh, I think it's a brilliant answer. I love it because you get these given these words, don't you? Like varicocele, what the hell is that? You know, I'd never heard of azoospermia when I was told that I had it over the phone, and I did the same thing. I think that the key with any internet research is just make sure it's verifiable and like well referenced information that you're getting, not some dude on Reddit or whatever, and like, or even if it is someone's opinion, but as long as they're kind of signposting that world, you know. But yeah, I love that because it's bringing a bit of clarity to a very confusing situation. And for you, I mentioned like hope being like finger holes. You were giving yourself hope there. Okay, this is what it is. It is treatable. It's a like a outpatient operation, etc. So you were otherwise. I suppose you know you could easily catastrophize in that situation in any. So yeah, I really love that. And how about you, Sean?
Yeah, it's so great to be part of this because I'm the complete opposite. I tend to process information differently, a lot slower, I guess. I take more time to think through things and come back and maybe do the research at a later point. I think on reflection, what I do at my lowest point is I tend to switch off completely from the fertility space. I stop going on my phone because you get to that point where you start following so many accounts that are either fertility clinics or patients or advocates or businesses promoting the fertility world, that it's all you ever see. And I think that's really positive because there's so many people talking about it once you're in it, and I love it. And it's always been such a great place for me. But for a week or maybe 10 days or so, I think looking back on what I've done is I've had that complete escapism from it. And then what I do is I try to remind myself how much is out there in the world, and we all live our own little bubbles, and we all have our own day-to-day routines and so on. And obviously, we're restricted to the working life, most of us, and so we have to fit into the routine that we've set most days. But what I like to do is try and get away from that sort of condensed headspace that you're in, and try and watch some sport or watch something new, and go out and think about what's going on in the world, and maybe try and do some traveling, get away for a little bit. I know that's not going to be something that's suitable for everyone, but if you can get away for the weekend, get away for the weekend. Remind yourself that there's a world living its life out there, and that sometimes helps me then ground myself back. And then after a week or a couple of weeks, something just happens. You wake up and that pressure's gone, and you can start maybe refocusing your energy on what the next steps are. But sometimes I just need a complete break from it.
Yeah. Also love that. And like you said, that's why we bring these conversations to the fore, because everyone reacts differently, and it's that some people watching this will be able to pick out bits from what everyone said and make what works for them. Because I've also done that, Sean, and but I recognize in what you're saying the healthy way of getting out of there for a bit, just mentally checking out. That's not burying your head in the sand, because I did that too, and I did that for probably a year and a half, and it wasn't a healthy place to be. I wasn't solving anything by doing that. But then once I did start confronting those difficult questions and having those difficult conversations with Jenna, I then found the value in, at times, checking out, as we both did, and just saying, do you know what? Let's book the holiday. Let's go. And like you said, it's sometimes a fortunate thing to be able to do, especially when you have uncertainty about what budget you're going to need to put aside for fertility treatment. But sometimes it can be a real lifeline as well to just get away from everything, because I've said it before, your home is like a place of safety, but it's also the place where by and large you're receiving a lot of that bad news, like the phone calls from the clinics, or letters about appointments or referrals or whatever else. And you're in the home, as safe a place it can be, it can also be a place where it feels like that it's just all about fertility sometimes, because it's your private space where you have those conversations. So getting away from that norm is really a very a great coping strategy as well. So before I come on to kind of what is going to be the last topic that we have here, I'll come on to a question that's come in. It's an amazing question, but I'll say for anyone else that's listening as well, just if anything comes up for you, please feel free to get it in either the Q&A or the chat. I believe that in the Q&A you might be able to ask anonymously if you want. But an amazing questions come in. And again, I'll put it out to the floor as to who might want to answer first. But what has your experience so far taught you about yourself?
Anish, do you want to go first, or?
I would say it's taught me sort of how strong I am, in that sense that I didn't realize that sort of mental strength that I had, especially with all these setbacks, all this uncertainty. It's sort of given me that idea of, look, if I can get past one thing, yeah, look, let the next thing come on, and I'll get past that. I'm talking from a position of not going through those weights of having to wait for the clinic to tell us how many embryos we've got, or we have to go down the route of genetic testing. So that sort of wait to find out if the embryos are genetically normal. So I'm speaking sort of from an early aspect of it at that point, and I don't know how that's going to test me. But yeah, I would say it's initially when I first got that first semen analysis, which wasn't very good, it sort of took something out of me. But when I started to see the improvement, it sort of said to me, okay, no, you know what, you can do this. You can be there for your wife and move forward with it.
Amazing. Yeah, you often don't know how strong and resilient you can be until it's tested. And yeah, thank you for that answer. Sean, do you have anything to add to that at all?
I think what the main thing it has probably taught me, maybe reminded me, about is I've learned that I want to be a parent regardless of whether it's my own biological child. And I say reminded, it's going to sound a bit weird, isn't it? Because how could you be reminded that you knew you wanted to be a parent without your own biology prior to knowing that you can't pass on your own genetics? Well, it's impossible to know that. But the feeling of being reminded or being taught that coincides because I feel like it has reminded me about my own upbringing and my own experiences with caregivers and being from quite a unique background in terms of who brought me up and my own personal situation and the people that I've learned from and gained knowledge from and had things passed down from. And knowing now that I just want to be that person for someone or hopefully multiple people. If we're lucky enough to have one child, I think we'll all be happy. But if we can have more than one, then fantastic. And I just want to pass that life experience, those good times, that knowledge, that thirst for life onto someone, regardless of whether they're my own genetic child or not. And I think that's the biggest thing that it's taught me is that being a parent isn't just about biology. It's about bringing people up and sharing life with them. And I think that's what we crave so much as people that are going through infertility.
Wow, thank you, Sean. It's just, it's funny, not funny, if you know what I mean. Like, but people in our situation will understand what I mean here. But you say about asking yourself that question about whether you really want to be a father and thinking, well, like, kind of, but why do I even have to ask that? It's because when you're presenting with this challenge, you have to go through those questions, especially if it means becoming a donor recipient father and pursuing that. You have to ask these big, difficult questions, and you do have to really soul search to get there. So yeah, I completely understand what you mean, and it's those big questions deserve the due consideration that they take, and
Mm.
then it elicits big answers, and those big answers are the ones that are like your North Star, which continues to guide you the way that that you and Bronte want to go. So thank you.
Yeah, then you mentioned about burying your head in the sand, and I think it's important to highlight that if we'd have had this session a year ago, that wouldn't be in the same headspace that I am now today. And I think that's what everyone on the call has to recognise and will already know themselves, is because it does take time to get to a point where you can self-reflect on all of the things that me and Anish have been able to tonight because of the strength and the perseverance that we've shown to try and get forwards. I think the darkest point for me was not remembering there's a lust for life. And now that I'm in a better headspace, it's remembering that all of the things that I like about living and experience, I want to share them and pass them on to someone else, regardless of how we get there. And so if anyone's listening or watching it back who isn't in the same frame of mind that we are currently, that's not necessarily a reflection on us as individuals because we're stronger than you. It's just because we've had time to try and reflect on where we're at.
That's a great point, and that's why I was so pleased and privileged to have you two guys here, because what's also important is that you're both living in this weight right now. It's not that you're talking about it from hindsight or retrospection. You're living that, but you're also acknowledging there that even during the process, you you kind of become callous to certain things. You grow. You, like Anish said, you recognize your own strength and your own resilience, and you grow through it as well. And that's a really important point. So yeah, thank you guys. So I think to kind of round off with any final advice or tips for anyone that's either listening now or pick it up in the future, Anish, what would your final kind of headline takeaway be for anyone?
I would say I've got two or three. I would say one of them is, like I mentioned earlier, celebrate the small wins. So you know, talking from a male fertility aspect, if your sperm analysis has improved after you've improved your diet or start going to the gym, or, you know, simple one, stop putting your phone in your front pocket, celebrate that small win. That's one step hopefully closer towards parenthood. Don't hold things back from your partner. So if you're feeling upset about something, or you're not happy about something with fertility, then speak to them. Don't hold it in you, because even now it's still seen as a women's thing. Even, you know, I can even talk from experience this week. When we've been called into the appointment, it's always my wife's name. It's never both of our names. So, and as good as the clinic are and the doctor's great, it's one of those small things where it's still, you know, the perception is still seen that it's a female's treatment, and we're just there to provide the sample at the end. And then the other thing is not, for example, one of my friends, him and his wife got pregnant very quickly, but try not to compare your timeline with anyone else's. You know, your journey is your journey, and it's not, you're not in a race with anyone. As much as it may feel like, oh, they've got married, they've had they've had 1 or 2 kids now, and they're sort of, their life is sort of complete in that sense, and they're starting the next chapter. Everyone's journey is different, and you've got to accept that for what it is. But, you know, again, celebrate those small wins when they come.
Absolutely perfect. Thank you so much, Sean.
Some great advice there, especially the last one about comparing yourselves to your friends. Wow, it's so right. It's so hard to not do that, isn't it? But I agree. It's great advice in terms of trying not to do that, and I would echo that entirely. I think try to familiarize yourself with as much of the terminology as possible, and get to grips with it and understand it, understand what you and your partner need to do, and really learn about the ins and outs of it, because everything that your partner's experiencing, especially if you've got a female partner, you need to try and understand all of the steps that it takes to get to the IVF, and all the steps that the IVF itself. Because one of the things that I didn't appreciate was, until you actually get to the point where you're starting to do stimulation and egg retrievals and embryo transfers, there's a whole new world where it's like the timeline of things, and just getting that diagnosis and pushing yourselves to the point where you can actually start treatment is hard enough. And then you need to try and close that chapter, at least bookmark it for now, and then learn a lot more about the actual IVF treatment, because the more you know, the more you'll feel in the room. Because as Anish said, as good as some of the clinics are, they don't address us men as well as we would hope they do. And so sometimes you feel like you're a secondary part of that conversation. So if you know things a little bit more about the ins and outs of the terminology, it will help you feel a bit more involved, and then you won't feel as isolated in those situations then. And obviously that's something that Anisha said perfectly. You know, everyone's different and we're all individuals. But as advice, just try and get your head around the treatment as much as possible, because you'll feel more involved then as a man. And then finally, just don't feel guilty about having your own personality and your own hobbies. If you've got hobbies that you dropped prior to the treatment, try and pick them back up, or try and find yourself a hobby so that you can prioritize yourself amongst all of the drama and all of the chaos that's going to ensue as you and your partner try to become parents.
Yeah, amazing as well, guys. Brilliant. Like, so much great information, great advice there for anyone who picks this up, as I said, either live or down the line. And I'm very, very grateful for you both to come on here tonight and share this so vulnerably, so openly, and it's only a positive thing for everyone that will pick this up. So thank you so much. I can't say that enough. Honestly, I love these events because there's, as I said, different perspectives, different takeaways, and there's something for everyone here. So yeah, thank you. I'll not take any more of your time, and just say thank you again, and speak to you both soon.
It's a pleasure.
Cheers. No,
Cheers,
thanks for
boys.
having us.